Hey everyone, before this video begins, I just wanted to let you know that I'm still suffering from camera issues, so you're sadly not going to see my ugly mug in this video, which is why it's probably going to be a little weird because the entire time I was talking to a camera. The problem isn't that it's dead this time, the problem is that it's slow as fuck and it's hard as hell for me to sync the audio with it, making near impossible. So if you notice that the video is a little weird this time, that's the reason why. I don't have the time to re-record this, probably just something wrong with my OBS or something. I don't know, I don't give a shit, I just have to make a video and I want to make this video and you just gotta do whatever's necessary and I don't feel like re-recording this shit. So please enjoy this video as it is. I'm going to try and fix my camera because I really need it soon. And my dog. Yeah, thanks for that, Jewel. Anyway, thanks, bye. So, back in middle school, I was really into creepypasta. Well, not really, but I had an interest in creepypasta. I had a friend who was really into the universe of creepypasta, and she got me into it, and I read about it, and I was kind of hooked, but I quickly left that behind. The creepypastas that I remember are the ones that everyone knows. Jack the Killer, Smile Dog, Slenderman, you know, those ones that everyone knows. But me leaving creepypasta behind was a case of me growing up and it not growing up with me. I think that the reason why I no longer had interest in creepypasta was because it had a lack of quality control. Either that or it was just overran by edgy teenagers, and yeah, we all know what happens when that happens. The last time I heard about a creepypasta become huge was when Siren Head blew up, and I still enjoy the good creepypasta now again, and by that I mean I frequently scroll through r/I'm sorry John because that shit's hilarious and I love it. So don't judge me because we're all into that Lovecraft shit. So yeah, just don't judge me. I don't think it was that surprising to me when I found myself falling into the universe of SCP. And it happened much of the same way I got into creepypasta. I have friends in the Discord server who, when we were playing the Waifu Gacha bot, they would claim the SCP stuff. And they said, hey, Ari, you should check this out. This is pretty cool. Well, of course, it took me several months and I checked it out. And yeah, it was pretty damn cool. And since it's spoopy month and everybody's into all this spoopy shit and I'm over here fucking hating everything because it's fall and my sweet summer child ass wants to be shipped to a place with endless goddamn summer, I might as well get into the spirit somehow and talk about some fucking SCPs because god damn it, I miss summer. So hello, welcome to this video of me talking shit about something that I don't understand, trying to understand why people like it, and I don't know, something about fandom and fan bases in a positive light. Anyway, we're talking about SCPs today. I am just going to randomly separate this video into three parts: the tip, the shaft, and the ball. The tip is basically going to be the introduction into this universe and how I got into it. The shaft is going to be what I encountered throughout this journey. That's mainly going to be some of the SCPs that I found and the ones I didn't like, the ones I really like, the ones I don't understand. And the balls is just going to be my conclusion and if I like this or not and if I would like to carry on with it. If you do not want to see a video of some random fucker on the internet expressing their very outside opinion into something that I still barely even understand and I've been reading and consuming this shit for almost 2 months now, then this may not be the video for you. But if you don't mind me talking shit about the things that you love, then welcome aboard. My name is Ari and I'm an asshole. Secure, contain, protect. This is the mission of the SCP Foundation, a global government underground agency funded by every single government in the world, categorize, log, and contain different anomalies and hopefully protect us from their devastating power, or just blow up an entire small village in Russia because it's being overran by man-eating monsters and you have no way to contain them. So better if everyone dies here, people. These anomalies are known as SCPs and they are easily identified by the numbers given to them in order to help with easy categorization and sorting. These anomalies are sorted into different classes based on how difficult it is to contain them. These classes are Safe, which speaks for itself, Euclid, which are just a bit more difficult to contain but are still kind of harmless, Peter, which is a fucking bitch, the one that starts with a T that I don't remember but they're basically world-ending nightmares, and Neutralize, which again speaks for itself. The Foundation is made up of different personnel, each ranking in different classes themselves. You have well-known and reoccurring characters like one Dr. Jack Bright, along with the O5 Council, the mysterious and highest ranking personnel of the SCP Foundation that's basically responsible with censoring articles or releasing articles or other shit. You just don't get in their way because they will not hesitate to kill your ass. Personnel are classified from to A classes, with A being high-ranking researchers who are allowed to be around the safe SCPs, E class being field agents, and D class being ex-cons who are disposable, and I guess that's why they're called D classes. So SCP is basically this entirely connected universe of different stories and pick your own canons and just a bunch of loosely and interconnected shit that is huge and it's expansive and there's so much into it, and I won't be able to get into it today. So sometimes you have SCPs who will overlap with other SCPs, and you wouldn't be surprised to encounter certain personnel or certain SCPs over and over again. But you also just have these really huge epic odysseys which contain some world-ending shit, and then this shit just goes across dimensions, and then you have really cool stuff like SCP-001, which a lot of people are trying to claim that spot, but is being saved only for the most special SCP. So right now, there's multiple SCP-001, but it doesn't belong to anyone yet because there are mods who are trying to ensure quality control. They won't just let anyone have that spot. But in the in-universe explanation as to why there has yet to be an SCP-001, the O5 Council just hasn't released the information yet. So in order for me to make this video, I've used multiple sources. I've used the wiki, I've used several videos on YouTube, the webcomic Oversimplified SCP, and of course some friends of mine who are probably watching this video right now. All of that will be linked in the description below. Let's talk about some SCPs. Step 2. The Shaft. Because there's just so many fucking SCPs, I can only talk about a few, and there's a lot in here that you're not gonna see, like SCP-5000 or Larry the Loving Llama, and I'm also going to break these down into my own little groups. So we're just gonna kind of start our way at the bottom and work our way up, starting with the things that can kill you group, also known as my least favorite SCPs because they are things that can kill you, and they're pretty boring because of that. The Peanut. This is the very first SCP and the very first SCP that comes to mind when you think boring ass SCPs because it's a thing and it can kill you. SCP started on 4chan in 2004 based on the comment under a post featuring the sculpture that will be on screen right now. This sculpture was created by a Japanese artist and is completely unnamed. The artist wished for their work to not be used for commercial use. Of course, with almost 2 decades of work, SCP has undergone many rule changes and development. For example, there is currently a rule that you cannot use copyrighted material, but the Peanut is a weeping angel and it is the very first SCP, so obviously it is an exception. While the Peanut in universe I find to be very boring because it's a thing that can kill you and the weeping angels are better, and I say that as someone who has never fucking seen Doctor Who, the current developments around it I find a lot more interesting. The artist of the original sculpture has been very generous, although they have shown some mild distaste over what their creation has become in the West online. They completely understand the fandom and where they're coming from, and they have given some generous permission to use their work. However, the Peanut is also currently undergoing some redesigns by indie game developers who wish to appease the creator and their wishes, but also the fans because it's kinda not SCP without the Peanut. I mean, it may be really boring and underrated to me, but it was the very first SCP. The Containment Breach game had the Peanut in it and everybody lost their fucking shit when playing that. So the Peanut is a really weak SCP and I could not give a damn, but I think that the current real world situation around the Peanut is way more interesting than his story itself. The Old Man. Man, I had to write this one down because if I didn't, I would have just completely forgotten that this SCP exists. And this was one of the very first SCPs I encountered, and I don't hate the Old Man, I don't. don't. It's just, he's a thing that can kill you, and because of that, he's really fucking forgettable to me. I honestly remember his backstory, the young man, more, and I admire that he's not really just this thing that can kill you. He's a predator who's hunting his prey, and I really like the fact that the Foundation loses their fucking shit when his fucking finger twitches. But again, he just kind of falls into that it's a thing that can kill you line, and for that I find him extremely forgettable. Shy Guy, again, another one of the first SCPs that I encountered, and honestly I like the SCP animated version of Shy Guy more than I like him himself. And the most interesting part of that story was how the Foundation took a D-class and submerged him hundreds of thousands of feet below sea so that he could draw up this portrait of Shy Guy, and it was super freaky. He finished it just in time, and then Shy Guy came to kill him, and the Foundation finally had a source of what he looked like, because of course you can't look at him or else he'll fucking kill you when the Foundation already has enough deaths on his goddamn hands. But the SCP animated version, I think it's the best because they give these SCPs their own story. They're following both the SCP lore, but they're framing it around different circumstances. So in the Shy Guy video, you know who Shy Guy is, you know why you shouldn't look at him, but you have this way more interesting story about the doctor who was researching Shy Guy, and she gets captured by this kind of anti-SCP group that I don't really know much about. I should probably learn more about that in the future. And she uses her pictures of Shy Guy to her advantage, and that was really cool. But everything else around this SCP I really don't care. Able. So this is like kind of the more tolerable, it's a thing that can kill you SCP that I've encountered. If anything, it's one of my favorite it's a things that can kill you because I've come across a lot of them and I don't give a damn. I like Able because of his uniqueness in the it's thing that can kill you category. I like that he's based around Christian mythology. I like how he's just this hardened warrior that the Foundation tried to use for their own gain. But Able doesn't have loyalty. He just loves the call of war. The only case of loyalty and respect that he's demonstrated was when he's faced warriors that have earned his respect. So like one time he was going ape shit, and then he's like, hey, where's this guard? And another guard was like, oh, he died, and Able stops fighting because he says he was the only guy who wanted to continue to fight me when all of his friends were dead. A man like that should be honored, so I'm not gonna fight you anymore, to show respect to him and his memory. And he just got captured and went away. And I think that's really cool. I haven't looked much into Kane. I know that he's kind of a safe SCP, and I also got spoiled on how their story ends. But Able, pretty dope, because any man who enjoys and respects Gilgamesh because they realize how much of a badass you have to be to piss off a horny goddess and suplex a goddamn minotaur is a man of culture in my book. Let's just move on to kind of like the weird ones. And I don't use weird as in the total sense of the word, but kind of like, huh, that's kind of weird, but it's also pretty intriguing, so let's check it out. Garfield. I don't know what you want me to say, it's just fucking Garfield, and it's pretty fucking cool because once again, Garfield has not escaped the internet's powers of turning it into some kind of Lovecraftian horror, and I kind of love it. The Endless IKEA. Man, I completely side with the conspiracy theory that this was just written by some guy who worked at an IKEA and was super pissed off, so they said, fuck IKEA, I'm gonna write a fucking horror story about IKEA. But this is a really cool SCP, and it's honestly low-key one of my favorites. Not my complete favorite, but it's really good. The best part about this story is the survival element to it. I like how clearly defined it is that these people were able to continue to live in this IKEA with things like the cafeteria constantly replenishing food and the IKEA employees being dormant at day but hostile at night. I like how you're just able to be trapped in this IKEA with just no sense at all. You were just at the wrong place at the wrong time, and you're now here with all these different people who just so happen to be from different dimensions. And I like how these people broke up and formed settlements in this giant endless store to ensure their survival. All that stuff is really cool, and it presents this wonderful foundation that anyone can just take the idea and run with. Like, it deserved that fan game that was made in a week, and there's a lot of really cool kind of stories around the endless IKEA. So it's kind of weird, but I really like it, and I really wish there was more like that. Safe SCPs. I like a lot of safe SCPs because they're just these little details that help flesh out the world a bit more, because not every SCP has to be some kind of horrific monster or some kind of device that will literally help reconstruct the world after a world-ending event. Sometimes it can just be like small little details that help flesh out the world a bit more. So some safe SCPs that you have are this bottle of pills, and the pills can cure anything, but they're a finite resource. So the Foundation uses this tree that can copy anything, kind of duplicate the pills, but it doesn't always work, but they're still trying. You have a safe SCP that's a fucking pizza box that will replenish itself with pizza, but it's sadly Little Caesar, so I don't want that. But you also have an SCP that's like a bell, and when you ring it, a fucking butler comes. Things that I need in my life right now, number 879. There's a clock-like SCP where if you put something in it, it will expel something else that's entirely different, and it doesn't always work to the effect that you want. There's an SCP that can dispense any kind of liquid, but it may be safe and maybe Euclid, we don't know, because it can dispense chemicals and things like that, which is beneficial. Who knows, it can be used for harm. So the gift from Dad is really cute because it's a bowl of soup, and when you place the bowl in front of someone, it automatically fills up with chicken noodle soup, and people who eat the soup, they're like, oh, that's great. It like cures my illness because I was in pain. And when they finish the bowl, there's a note at the bottom from their father, and that's just so adorable. And I love it. Oh, and I just wrote down procrastination rock. It's a rock that makes you procrastinate. It's a funny, here's my upvote. Bigfoot. It doesn't really seem uncommon that cryptids will find their way into SCP because a lot of people who write SCPs are using kind of like things in the real world and giving them stories, much like the Peanut. But the thing that makes Bigfoot stand out and not just, you know, the typical Bigfoot story we hear is the lore surrounding it. So Bigfoot was a race of beings that evolved alongside humankind, but they were just far more advanced than us. Then humans decided to try and wipe out the Bigfoots to extinction. And when we succeeded in that endeavor, the Bigfoots left behind a note that said, "We forgive you." So the Foundation makes up this lie to cover up, you know, the forgiveness the Bigfoots want to share, and say that they're actually these deadly creatures that have to be wiped out. And that's really fucked up because they were just living and humans got scared and tried to kill them. And when they show forgiveness, the Foundation's like, we're gonna kill you anyway. And it's just one of those stories where you think, well, who's the real monster here? Because I think it's the Foundation. Like, even with everything the Foundation does and all of the extraterrestrial shit that they contain, yeah, no, it's fucked up. So my next group is SCPs that I don't understand, and there's only two of them: Red Sea Object and What Happened at Site 13. I've come across a lot of these SCPs. SCPs are huge, and they can be huge, and they are just so epic on a grand scale that it can drive me a little crazy sometimes because I'm brand new to this and I just threw myself into the deep end. So with Red Sea Object and What Happened at Site 13, I think I was just too tired to understand. It takes a lot of mental energy, okay? So big, and there's so much going on, and I get it. I know what it is. I know like the beginning of all of it, but you just kind of lose me after the intro, and that's why I don't understand it. I just kind of want to shelve these SCPs for a later time because honestly, you can just break down every fucking detail of these SCPs and I would just be here like Patrick with the hammer. It's just, my brain can't take it right now. So I'll just put a pin in that, okay? We'll come to that later. All right, I'm running out of time. We got a fucking lightning round through this shit. These are my favorite SCPs, starting with Tickle Monster, because if you know SCP, you know SCP-999, because I said it once, I'll say it a million times again. You cannot hate anything that just wants to bring you joy. SCP-999 is a glob of orange goo who is so safe it is allowed to freely roam around the Foundation. It just wants to make you happy, and you get happy because it just gives off this aura of happiness, and how can you not love it? So the thing about Tickle Monster is it has a little game of pick your canon, and I can see why a lot of people would prefer one canon over the other. I personally prefer the darker canon. I cannot blame you for wanting the canon where Tickle Monster was made in some guy's basement, because he's so cute and he's so lovable that you don't want it to be ruined by this giant fucker known as the Scarlet King. But I prefer the Scarlet King canon because it's just more exciting to me. Basically, I like the idea of Tickle Monster being curvy. I like that he is just a baby who was born from very unfortunate circumstances, and it was going to have evil brothers and sisters, but it is the only weapon the Foundation has in taking down the Scarlet King, and it's gonna do that with nothing but love. It is going to kill its father, the embodiment of evil, with just love and kindness, and I like the excitement of that way more than I like the canon where he was made in some guy's basement. Don't get me wrong, when I first heard about that canon, it fucked me up, because how dare you do this to my Tickle Monster? But at the same time, it's just interesting as hell. So the Plague Doctor. Plague Doctor is not a thing that kills you. The Plague Doctor is a man of great culture. Taking very obvious inspiration from the bubonic plague, Plague Doctor is a gentleman. Yes, upon his discovery, the Foundation had to terminate his patients, but the Plague Doctor went with the Foundation peacefully. When he's alone, he sticks to his notes in his book, and when he's with company, many people report being very charmed by him. He's a sharp man, a master of his practice, that being medical practice, and he's cultured. He traveled the world. He speaks several languages, with his preferred language being French, but he also has ulterior motives, and even with that, I still kind of can't help but love him because he's a charmer. The Plague Doctor's entry is a very, very long one, so you're gonna want to get comfy and grab some tea, because on one hand, he is quite charismatic, but on the other hand, his ideas and his practices are not savory, but you can kind of see where he's coming from in that sick, twisted, villainous way. But at the same time, he's just such a gentleman, but at the same time, he can literally kill you by touching you. But at the same time, he's so intelligent and cultured, but at the same time, those patients the Foundation terminated were innocents who the Plague Monster turned into living corpse and just stood aside and wrote down notes and just went away, and he did the same thing to other Foundation personnel. Basically, he's a Euclid for a reason. At the same time, he's just such a gentleman. Such a fucking gentleman. Where the Dragons Went. Read this story if you want to feel like shit. This story is heartbreaking and tragic, and it is too good to spoil. Where the Dragons Went is a story about origami dragons who would emerge from this box, and they were friendly and playful until one day their visit became less frequent, and their visits were just never the same again. And you will feel so sad. You will feel like shit. It is so underrated compared to all of the bigger SCPs. It is heartbreaking and tragic, and it leaves you with so much emotion. Just please read it. Read this. If you have no interest in SCP, read this one fucking story. Please, I'm begging you. Please, God, please. Cragglewood Park. So the creepypasta Candle Cove is one of my favorite creepypastas ever. Candle Cove is a unsettling and unnerving short story written by the creator of the webcomic Brood Hollow, which for the past several years, aka since this channel started, I've been promising myself I would cover Candle Cove. I just haven't found the right time to do it because every fucking time doesn't feel right the right time to talk about Brood Hollow, and I just realized I said Candle Cove instead of Brood Hollow. Basically, Brood Hollow is a really good comic. Candle Cove is a really good short story, and you should read it. Candle Cove is a short story about a group of children who would watch a TV show. Now adults, they join together on an online forum and slowly become more disturbed because they they realized that their small group were the only people who's ever heard of this TV show known as Candle Cove, because upon asking their parents, they would say they would just sit in front of the TV watching static. I bring up Candle Cove because those feelings of tension and unnerved was what I got when reading Cragglewood Park. It's very much like Candle Cove, but it's its own thing, and I don't want to compare creations, but they're both equally good. Cragglewood Park is a literal young children between the age of 4 and 12 would have dreams where they were in an amusement park with only one ride, a carousel. In this park, there were trees that were laughing and singing, and the children had to laugh and sing with these trees, but they were sobbing through their smiles because if they didn't please the trees, what was gonna happen? We don't know. Sometimes one of these children would have to go on a carousel, and when they did, it was like a funeral. The children would cry and hug, and the child who went on the carousel was just never seen again, I guess. I say I guess because the children in the nightmares were complete strangers. Now adults, Cragglewood Park is a faded memory. That is until they were interviewed by the SCP Foundation and had to relive the horrors that they went through. Cragglewood Park, again, is one of my favorite SCPs because of the tension and unnerve of the story. The logs are so goddamn scary that you should not read them at night like I did. Just don't. I mean, read it, but don't read it at night because it's spoopy month, and don't do it while listening to spoopy music because you're gonna be fucking scared about a goddamn fictional nightmare park with some Disney ass fucking laughing shit, and then a flower grows beneath your feet and you scream because it has your fucking face. Build-A-Bear and Patches. Once again, I fall in line with a conspiracy theory that one of the writers for these stories was just a pissed off ex-Build-A-Bear Workshop employee and just had to write a horror story to vent their frustration. Build-A-Bear and Patches are complete opposites. Patches was the one that made me cry. Build-A-Bear was the one that made me go, oh hell yeah, dude, I fucking like that shit. Patches is adorable, and he made me want to sob. He's an adorable little bear made of mismatched fabric, and much like Tickle Monster, he just wants to make you happy. He wants to relieve your pain. So he goes to the emotionally and physically injured, and he'll hug you and he'll try to make you feel better. And when that doesn't work, he'll tear himself apart and he'll try to use himself to heal you. And it's just so sad and tragic that I fucking can't. God damn it! Build-A-Bear, on the other hand, is a fucking nightmare, and I love him. No teddy bears are allowed at Site-24 for a reason. At first, Build-A-Bear was seemingly friendly, but then the Foundation learned that he could reconstruct crudely made replicas of himself out of various material, and the 3 replicas that he made were very violent and deadly. The first reconstruction was made out of human ears and emitted screaming so high-pitched that any personnel within its radius grew ears all over its body and died in 3 minutes. The second reconstruction, which is my favorite, was made out of an aborted fetus. Build-A-Bear performed the abortion on a female doctor and stuffed it inside of one of his reconstructions. When it was discovered that it was a fetus, a female doctor screamed, causing the reconstruction to scream in the voice of a high-pitched human infant. Then the fetus tried to crawl inside of the female doctor's uterus, and amidst chaos, both of them were incinerated. Is this my favorite because of my hatred towards children and seeing its pain and suffering was therapeutic to me? Yes. Yes, it was. That's how much of a twisted fuck I am. The third reconstruction isn't really that great because it's just made out of scrap metal, but it was discovered by one Dr. Carver, and when Dr. Carver chased it down, the reconstruction was murdering Foundation personnel, and then it and Build-A-Bear escaped and nobody knows where they are. It's theorized that they're still at Site-24, but nobody knows and no one can say, it just hasn't been seen since. Also, Build-A-Bear's backstory is really cool and really fucked up. It's just a really fucked up SCP, and I fucking love it because it is so fucked up. It's great. It's fucking great. And I love it because I like that fucked up shit. So we've reached the end, the balls, because I have to sadly rush through this video. So will I be revisiting SCP? Will I be keeping up with this? Hell yes. I kind of love this universe. Having just the plethora of readers and YouTube channels and animators and fan art, it is so extensive, and I love the passion that the fan base has for this universe. And just there's just so much content that I can't fit it all in one video. There's so much more to talk about, like Young Girl or Unlondon or the SCP with the coolest name ever, Bananazilla. 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 How cool of a name is that? Banana fucking Zilla. Banana Jewel. Bananazilla. Bananazilla. That's such a cool fucking name. But this is just such a cool universe. Such a big universe. And I really love and enjoy it. I want to spend more time with it. I'm looking forward to relaxing with it more because I want to learn more about the villains and the dimensions and all this other wild shit. And hello, Jewel, your paw is on my foot. Really dope. And I can easily see why there's so many fans and there's so much passion for it. I am very grateful for the quality control of SCPs and all of the tips and tricks to write your own. But I'm also grateful because I've seen a lack of gatekeeping in the fandom, and many people are just trying to break down these SCPs and ensure that more people fall in love with them just like they do. I definitely will be keeping up with SCP. This was a blast to undergo over the past 2 months, and I wish I had more time to talk about them. But with so much content, it's easy to see why there's entire YouTube channels around this universe. It's just so freaking huge. So I need to quickly close this out. I'm sorry for rushing it by just thanking the friends who helped me get into this universe. You guys know who you are. You're awesome and I love you, and this video would have not been possible without you. I'll link everything, all of the resources I use from the wiki to the YouTube channels down in the description below. Didn't like this video? If you like this video, well, there's more coming. Hopefully I get another one of these up next month. It's just gonna be under a different title, but you'll know it when you see it. Anyway, thank you for watching. My name is Ari. Everything's in the description below. And trying to think of a good SCP pun to end this on, but I can't right now, so I'm just gonna say goodbye.